The Blue Moon Jazz Lounge sat quietly on a corner in downtown Seattle, where the rain tapped gentle rhythms against foggy windows. Inside, warm amber lights glowed softly over wooden tables, and the air carried the scent of coffee mixed with old leather. A piano played somewhere in the distance, notes floating like whispers through the crowded space. Nathan Pierce occupied a corner booth, his figure nearly invisible in the dim light. He wore a simple gray sweater and dark jeans, nothing that would make anyone look twice. His hands rested around a glass of whiskey he had not touched for the past hour. The ice had melted long ago, turning the drink pale and forgotten. To the other patrons, he was just another quiet man seeking solace in music and solitude. Nobody recognized the face that appeared on magazine covers, the man who had revolutionized cloud computing before turning 30. Nobody knew that behind those tired green eyes lived a grief so profound it had hollowed him out from the inside. It had been 4 years since the accident. 4 years since his wife Rachel died in a car crash on their way home from this very jazz club. They had been celebrating their 5th anniversary, laughing about starting a family, planning a future that would never come. Since then, Nathan returned to this place every year on the same date, sitting in the same booth, ordering the same drink, and never finishing it. The woman who noticed Claire Bennett moved through the lounge with practiced grace, balancing trays and remembering orders without writing them down. Her dark blonde hair was pulled into a ponytail, and her bright blue eyes held a warmth that made customers feel welcome. She had worked at the Blue Moon for 3 years while studying dance education during the day. Money was always tight. Her apartment was tiny, her car unreliable, and her dreams sometimes felt impossibly far away. But Claire possessed something that wealth could never buy, an ability to see people truly see them, not just their surface. She noticed the elderly couple who held hands between songs, the young musician nervously waiting for his turn on stage, and the man in the corner who looked like he was drowning in memories. She had seen Nathan come in earlier, watched him sink into that booth as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. Something about his posture, the way he stared at nothing, pulled at her heart. Claire understood loneliness. She had felt it herself after her father passed away 2 years ago, leaving her and her mother to navigate life without his steady presence. As the night deepened, a saxophone joined the piano, playing a melody so achingly beautiful that conversations dimmed. Couples moved to the small dance floor, swaying together in the soft light. Claire stood near the bar, wiping down glasses when she glanced again at the man in the corner. He was watching the dancers with an expression that made her chest tighten. It was not envy or bitterness. It was longing so raw and exposed that she felt it across the room, a question that changed everything. Claire did not plan what happened next. She simply acted on instinct, on the belief that sometimes people needed kindness more than they needed to be left alone. She set down her tray, smoothed her black work dress, and walked toward his table. Her heart pounded with each step. What was she doing? This man was a stranger. He might think she was crazy. He might tell her to leave. But something deeper than logic pushed her forward. Nathan did not notice her approach until her shadow fell across his table. He looked up slowly, confusion flickering in his eyes as they focused on her face. Claire smiled, hoping it did not look as nervous as she felt. Her voice came out soft but clear. "I know this might sound strange, but would you like to dance?" For a long moment, Nathan simply stared at her as if she had spoken a foreign language. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He glanced at the dance floor, then back at her face, searching for something, a joke, a dare, an explanation. "I do not dance anymore," he finally said, his voice rough from disuse. "Maybe tonight you could start again," Claire replied gently. The saxophone played on, filling the silence between them. Nathan looked down at his hands, then back at this stranger who had appeared out of nowhere with an invitation that felt both impossible and necessary. Something inside him, some small part that had been sleeping for 4 years, stirred awake. Maybe it was the anniversary. Maybe it was the music. Maybe it was simply that this woman looked at him without knowing who he was, without wanting anything except to offer a moment of human connection. Slowly, as if moving through water, Nathan stood. He was tall, with broad shoulders that seemed to carry invisible weight. When he placed his hand in hers, it trembled slightly. The dance Claire led him to the dance floor, acutely aware of every eye that turned their way. The other dancers made space without a word, sensing something significant was happening. She placed one hand on his shoulder and held his other hand in hers. He was stiff at first, his body resistant, as if he had forgotten how to move with another person. Claire began to sway gently, following the saxophone's slow rhythm, and gradually, Nathan followed. His steps were uncertain, mechanical, like someone relearning a language they had once spoken fluently. But Claire was patient, guiding him with subtle pressure, her movements fluid and forgiving. She did not try to make conversation or ask questions. She simply danced, letting the music speak for both of them. As the song continued, something shifted. Nathan's shoulders relaxed slightly. His grip on her hand became less desperate, more present. He began to move with the music rather than against it, finding a rhythm that felt almost natural. Claire felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them away. She did not know this man's story, did not know what grief he carried, but she recognized the weight of it. In this moment, under the amber lights with the saxophone crying its beautiful pain, two broken people moved together and felt a little less alone. The song ended too soon. The final note hung in the air like a question. Nathan stopped moving, but did not immediately let go of her hand. When he finally did, he looked at Claire with an expression she could not quite read. Gratitude mixed with something deeper, perhaps fear at feeling something again. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice cracking slightly. Before Claire could respond, he turned and walked quickly toward the exit, leaving her standing in the middle of the dance floor. The other patrons returned to their conversations, the moment already fading into the night's memories. Claire walked back to his table to clear his glass and found two things waiting for her. A $100 bill, far more than his single drink cost, and a business card with elegant silver lettering that read, Nathan Pierce, Chief Executive Officer, Pierce Technologies. She stood holding the card, her mind trying to connect the quiet, grieving man she had danced with to the name she vaguely recognized from news headlines. But more than curiosity, she felt that same pull in her chest, a certainty that their brief encounter had meant something, though she could not yet understand what. Outside, Nathan sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel, breathing hard as if he had just run a marathon. For the first time in 4 years, he had touched another person with tenderness. For the first time since Rachel died, he had moved to music without feeling, like he was betraying her memory, and the strangest part was that it had felt right. He looked back at the glowing windows of the Blue Moon Jazz Lounge and wondered about the woman with kind eyes who had asked a simple question that somehow felt like the beginning of something he did not yet have words for. Claire woke to pale sunlight streaming through the thin curtains of her studio apartment. She lay still for a moment, replaying the previous night in her mind. The dance, the quiet man with sad eyes, the business card that now sat on her nightstand like a small mystery waiting to be solved. She reached for her phone and typed the name into the search bar. Nathan Pierce. Within seconds, her screen filled with articles, photographs, and headlines. Tech visionary, self-made billionaire, philanthropist, the man who had transformed data, security, and made millions before most people figured out their careers. Claire scrolled through images of Nathan in tailored suits at conferences, shaking hands with world leaders, accepting awards. He looked different in these photos, polished and distant, nothing like the vulnerable man who had trembled when taking her hand. Then she found an older article from 4 years ago. The headline made her breath catch. Tragedy strikes tech mogul, wife dies in car accident. She read about Rachel Pierce, a talented architect, taken too soon, about Nathan's disappearance from public life for months afterward, about how he had returned to work but never to the social scene. Claire set down her phone, her heart aching for him. She understood now why he had looked so lost, Why that dance had seemed to cost him everything and give him something back at the same time. She got dressed and headed to her Sunday morning commitment, teaching free dance classes to kids at the Riverside Community Center. It was a small program she had started with her own savings, believing that every child deserved to experience the joy of movement regardless of what their parents could afford. An unexpected visitor. The community center was a humble building with scuffed floors and walls that needed painting. But to Claire, it was beautiful because of the laughter that filled it every weekend. Today, 12 children waited for her, their faces bright with excitement. She taught them basic steps, helped them find their rhythm, and watched as shy smiles transformed into confident grins. There was little Thomas, who had trouble speaking but could express himself through dance. There was Mia, whose family had recently moved from Mexico and who found friendship through shared movement. There was quiet Ethan, who wore leg braces and worked twice as hard as everyone else. Claire knelt beside Ethan, adjusting his stance. Remember, dance is not about perfect steps. It is about feeling the music in your heart and letting your body tell its own story. Ethan nodded seriously, then broke into a huge smile as he successfully completed a turn. "Miss Claire, who is that man watching us?" Mia whispered, pointing toward the doorway. Claire looked up and felt her heart skip. Nathan Pierce stood just inside the entrance, wearing jeans and a simple navy jacket, looking completely out of place and somehow exactly where he needed to be. Their eyes met across the room. He raised one hand in a small, uncertain wave. Claire asked her assistant, a college volunteer named Jenna, to take over for a moment. She walked toward Nathan, very aware of her old leggings and oversized sweatshirt, her hair in a messy bun. "Mr. Pierce," she said softly, "this is a surprise." "Nathan, please," he replied. "I hope I am not interrupting. I wanted to find you, to properly thank you for last night. You already left a very generous tip." He shook his head. "That was not a tip. That was an inadequate attempt to express something I do not have words for." He paused, glancing at the children. "What you are doing here? Is this your program?" Claire nodded. "I started it 6 months ago. Most of these kids come from families who cannot afford regular dance classes. I believe everyone deserves a chance to discover what their body can do when they stop being afraid." Nathan watched Ethan attempting a challenging sequence, his face serious with concentration. "That boy with the braces, does he come every week?" "Ethan? Yes. He never misses a class. His mother says it has changed his confidence completely." Something passed over Nathan's face, an emotion Claire could not quite name. He was quiet for a long moment, then turned to her. "Can I make a donation to your program?" Claire felt her cheeks warm. "You do not have to do that. I want to. Let me help you reach more children." Coffee and confessions. After class ended, Nathan asked if Claire would join him for coffee. They walked to a small cafe 2 blocks away, the kind of place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Nathan seemed more comfortable here than she had imagined a billionaire would be. They sat by the window, steam rising from their cups. For a while, neither spoke, the silence surprisingly comfortable. "Why did you ask me to dance last night?" Nathan finally said. Claire wrapped her hands around her mug. "You looked like someone who needed to remember something beautiful. I thought maybe the music could help." "You saw that just by looking at me?" "I see people. It is what I do." She hesitated, then added gently, "I read about your wife. I am so sorry." Nathan's jaw tightened, but he did not look away. 4 years ago yesterday, I go back to that jazz club every year on our anniversary. I sit in the same place we sat that last night. I order the same drink, and I remember." "That must be incredibly painful." "It was. It is." He exhaled slowly. "But last night something changed. When you asked me to dance, I almost said no. Every part of me wanted to stay in that booth, stay safe in my grief. But then I looked at you, and I saw someone who believed that broken things could still move. Claire felt tears threaten, but kept her voice steady. We are all broken in some way. The question is whether we let the broken parts define us, or whether we find new ways to be whole. Nathan smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. You sound like a philosopher. I sound like someone whose father died 2 years ago and who had to figure out how to keep dancing when the music stopped making sense. Understanding passed between them, the recognition of shared grief, different losses but the same hollow ache. An offer over. The next hour they talked like old friends. Nathan told her about Pierce Technologies, about how he had built it from nothing in a garage, about how success had never felt as good as people imagined. Claire shared her dreams of opening a full dance academy, of creating scholarships for underprivileged children, of proving that art was not a luxury, but a necessity. What if I could help make that happen? Nathan said suddenly. Claire blinked. What do you mean? Pierce Technologies has a foundation. We fund education programs, community initiatives. What you are doing at that community center, it deserves proper support. Real funding, a bigger space, more students. Nathan, that is incredibly generous, but I cannot accept charity. It is not charity. It is investment. Investment in something that matters. He leaned forward, his green eyes intense. You gave me something last night that I had lost. You reminded me that life continues, that beauty still exists, that connection is possible even when you think you have forgotten how. Let me give you something in return. Let me help you change more lives the way you changed mine. Claire felt overwhelmed, hope and fear mixing in her chest. This is too much. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you see people. I know you believe in second chances. I know you asked a stranger to dance when no one else saw that he needed saving. He paused. Let me do this. Not because you need rescuing, but because what you are building deserves to succeed. New beginnings. 2 weeks later, Claire stood in a newly renovated space 3 times larger than her old community center room. The floors gleamed, the mirrors sparkled. Professional sound equipment waited in the corner. A sign by the door read, Bennett Dance Academy, supported by the Pierce Foundation. She had 25 students now, with a waiting list growing daily. She had hired 2 part-time instructors. She had created a scholarship program that ensured no child would ever be turned away because of money. Nathan attended the opening day, standing quietly at the back, while children and parents explored the new space. When Claire finally made her way to him through the crowd, she found him watching Ethan demonstrate a jump sequence to his proud mother. You did this, Nathan said softly. We did this, Claire corrected. He turned to face her, and she saw something in his expression that made her pulse quicken. It was not just gratitude or friendship. It was something deeper, something that scared and thrilled her at the same time. Claire, I need to tell you something. I have not been able to stop thinking about you since that night at the jazz club, not just because of the dance, but because of who you are, the way you see the world, the way you make me want to see it too. Her breath caught. Nathan, I do not know if this is wise. We come from completely different worlds. Maybe that is exactly why it works. You do not see me as the billionaire or the grieving widower. You see me as just Nathan. And when I am with you, I remember who that person is. Before Claire could respond, little Mia ran up, grabbing Claire's hand. Miss Claire, come see what I learned. Claire laughed, allowing herself to be pulled away, but she glanced back at Nathan. He was smiling, watching her interact with the children, and in that moment she realized something terrifying and wonderful. She was falling for him, not for his money or status, but for the quiet man who understood loss, who valued kindness, who saw her work as important when the rest of the world saw it as just teaching dance to poor kids. That night, Nathan invited Claire to dinner at a small Italian restaurant, the kind of place where the owner knew every customer by name. Over pasta and red wine, their conversation flowed easily, moving from childhood memories to dreams for the future. "Tell me about Rachel," Claire said gently, "if you want to." Nathan was quiet for a moment, then began to speak. He told her about meeting Rachel in college, about how she had challenged him to think bigger, to use his talents for more than just profit, about how she had supported him through the early years of building his company when success felt impossible, about how they had planned to start a family right before the accident. "I thought I would never feel anything again," he admitted. "I thought grief was permanent. But then you appeared and asked me to dance, and suddenly I remembered that life was not over just because she was gone." Claire reached across the table, taking his hand. "Healing does not mean forgetting. It means learning to carry love with you while still moving forward." "Is that what you did after your father died?" She nodded. "It took time. Some days I still cry when I hear his favorite song or smell his cologne on someone passing by. But I also laugh again. I dream again. I let myself feel joy without guilt." Nathan turned his hand over, lacing his fingers with hers. "You are remarkable, Claire Bennett." "I am just someone who asked you to dance." "No," he said firmly. "You are someone who reminded me that I am still alive. That is not just. That is everything." They left the restaurant, walking slowly through the cool Seattle evening. When they reached Claire's modest car, Nathan hesitated, then pulled her into an embrace. She felt his heart beating against hers, steady and strong. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair, "for seeing me, for saving me without making me feel weak." Claire pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "You saved yourself, Nathan. You chose to stand up and dance. I just asked the question." He smiled, then did something that surprised them both. He leaned down and kissed her forehead gently, a gesture of affection and promise. As Claire drove home, her heart felt fuller than it had in years. She did not know where this path led, did not know if a waitress and a billionaire could build something real. But she knew that sometimes the most important step was simply choosing to move forward, trusting that the rhythm would guide you home. 3 months passed. Like a beautiful dream Claire kept expecting to end. Nathan became a regular presence in her life, showing up at the dance academy with coffee, staying to watch classes, talking with parents about their children's progress. He never arrived with fanfare or security teams, just a man in jeans who genuinely cared about what she was building. Their relationship deepened slowly, carefully, like two people who had been hurt before and knew the value of patience. They shared dinners at quiet restaurants, walked through Seattle's rainy streets under shared umbrellas, talked for hours about everything and nothing. Nathan opened up about his fears of moving forward, of feeling like he was betraying Rachel's memory. Claire listened without judgment, sharing her own struggles with guilt after her father's death. But as their connection grew stronger, so did the complications. Nathan's world was demanding, pulling him back toward obligations he could not ignore. Board meetings, investor calls, public appearances. The life of a billionaire was not something he could simply walk away from, no matter how much he wanted to. One evening, Claire arrived at her apartment to find a sleek black car waiting outside. A woman in an expensive suit stood beside it, her expression professional but cold. "Miss Bennett? I am Victoria Chen, Mr. Pierce's executive assistant. He asked me to bring you something." She handed Claire an elegant box. Inside was a dress, midnight blue silk that probably cost more than Claire's monthly rent. Along with it came an engraved invitation to the Pierce Technologies annual gala. "Mr. Pierce hopes you will attend as his guest," Victoria said, her tone suggesting this was more obligation than invitation. "A car will collect you at 7 on Saturday." Before Claire could respond, Victoria returned to the vehicle and drove away, leaving Claire standing on the sidewalk holding a dress that felt like it belonged to someone else's life. The gala Saturday arrived too quickly. Claire stood in front of her mirror, barely recognizing herself in the blue silk dress that fit perfectly. Her hair was styled in soft waves, her makeup subtle but elegant. She looked like she belonged at a billionaire's gala, but inside her stomach churned with anxiety. The car that arrived was not just nice, it was a limousine. The driver opened her door with a respectful nod, and Claire sank into leather seats, feeling like an imposter playing dress-up. The gala was held at the Grand Pacific Hotel, a towering building with chandeliers that cost more than houses. Claire stepped into a ballroom filled with Seattle's elite, men in custom tuxedos and women dripping with diamonds. Champagne flowed freely. A string quartet played classical music. Everything sparkled with wealth. She felt immediately out of place. Nathan found her within minutes, moving through the crowd with purpose. When he saw her, his face lit up in a way that made her breath catch. He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, looking every inch the powerful businessman, yet his eyes held the same warmth she had come to cherish. "You look absolutely beautiful," he said softly, taking her hand. "I feel like I am wearing a costume," Claire admitted. "You are the most real person in this room," he replied, guiding her toward the bar. For the first hour, Nathan stayed close, introducing her to colleagues and business partners. Most were polite, though Claire noticed the curious looks, the whispered conversations. She was being evaluated, measured against some invisible standard she did not understand. Then Victoria appeared, her expression urgent. "Nathan, the investors from Tokyo are here. They need to speak with you privately." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Tell them I will be there in 10 minutes. They are leaving in 5. This deal is worth $300 million. He looked torn, glancing between Claire and Victoria. Claire touched his arm gently. "Go. I will be fine." "Are you sure?" She smiled even though her stomach knotted. "I am a waitress. I know how to handle myself at parties." He kissed her forehead quickly and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Claire alone in a sea of strangers. The cruelty of privilege Claire wandered toward the balcony, needing air. She had barely stepped outside when she heard voices behind a marble column. "Did you see Nathan's date?" "Where did he find her?" "A thrift store." "I heard she teaches dance to poor children. How charitable." The voice dripped with sarcasm. "He is clearly having some kind of crisis. First Rachel dies and now he is slumming it with a waitress. Someone needs to remind him who he is." Claire felt her face burn. She wanted to leave, to disappear, but her legs would not move. The voices continued, dissecting her appearance, her background, speculating about what Nathan could possibly see in someone so ordinary. Maybe he feels sorry for her. You know Nathan, always trying to save something. The words hit like a physical blow. Was that what this was? Charity? A project for a grieving billionaire looking for meaning? She slipped back inside, her vision blurring with unshed tears. She found a quiet corner and pulled out her phone, calling for a regular taxi. She could not stay here, could not pretend she belonged in this world of diamonds and cruelty. As she waited by the entrance, Nathan found her. His expression shifted from confusion to concern when he saw her face. "Claire, what happened? Where are you going?" "Home." "I do not belong here, Nathan. This was a mistake." "What are you talking about? Did someone say something to you?" She laughed bitterly. "Multiple people, actually. But it does not matter. They are right. Look around. This is your world. Chandeliers and champagne and business deals worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. My world is scuffed dance floors and second-hand ballet shoes. We were fooling ourselves thinking this could work." Nathan's face hardened. "Tell me who said what." "It does not matter. It matters to me." "Why?" Claire's voice broke. "Why do I matter? Am I just another charity project? Another broken thing for Nathan Pierce to fix?" The hurt that flashed across his face told her the words had landed like she meant them to. He stepped closer, his voice low and intense. "Is that really what you think? That you are a project? I do not know what to think. You live in a penthouse. I live in a studio apartment. You make decisions worth hundreds of millions. I teach kids to dance for free. Your assistant looks at me like I am something stuck to her shoe. Your colleagues think you are having a breakdown. Maybe they are right. Stop, Nathan said firmly. Just stop. A taxi pulled up to the curb. Claire moved toward it, but Nathan caught her hand. Please do not leave. Not like this. I have to, before I get hurt worse than I already am. She pulled free and climbed into the taxi, refusing to look back as it drove away. Through the rear window, she saw Nathan standing alone on the steps of the hotel, looking lost in a way that made her heart ache even as anger burned in her chest. The breaking point the next week was torture. Nathan called and texted constantly, but Claire could not bring herself to respond. She threw herself into work, teaching extra classes, staying busy to avoid thinking about blue silk dresses and cruel whispers and the look on Nathan's face when she left. Then, on Thursday afternoon, Victoria appeared at the dance academy. Claire's stomach dropped, but she forced herself to remain professional. Miss Chen, can I help you? Victoria's expression was softer than before, almost apologetic. May I speak with you privately? They stepped into Claire's small office. Victoria closed the door and sighed deeply. I owe you an apology. I have been cold to you, and it was unfair. Claire blinked in surprise. Why are you telling me this? Because Nathan is miserable. He has barely slept, barely eaten. He canceled 3 major meetings. Yesterday, he fired 2 board members, the ones who made disparaging comments about you at the gala. He did what? He told them that anyone who disrespected you disrespected him, and he had no interest in doing business with people who measured worth by bank accounts. Victoria smiled slightly. It caused quite a scandal. Several investors are furious. Claire sank into her chair, overwhelmed. He should not have done that. Those relationships are important. You are what is important to him. That is what I came to tell you. Victoria paused. I was engaged once to a man I loved deeply. He died in a climbing accident 5 years ago. I watched Nathan go through the same grief when Rachel died. I have seen him hollow and broken for 4 years. Until you... Victoria, Let me finish. When Nathan talks about you, he comes alive again. Not because you are a project or charity case, but because you see him as Nathan, not as Pierce Technologies. You make him laugh. You challenge him. You remind him what matters. That is not pity. That is love. Claire felt tears slip down her cheeks. But his world and mine, they are too different. Only if you let them be. Nathan does not care about that world half as much as he cares about you. The question is, do you care enough about him to fight for what you have? The grand gesture that evening, Claire received a text with an address. Nothing else, just a location across town. Her heart pounding, she drove there, finding herself in front of an old warehouse building. The door was unlocked. She pushed it open and gasped. The entire warehouse had been transformed into a dance studio. Professional floors, floor-to-ceiling mirrors, state-of-the-art sound systems, ballet bars along every wall. In the center of the space stood Nathan, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, looking nervous and hopeful. What is this? Claire whispered. Your dream. A real academy. Space for 100 students. Scholarships for anyone who needs them. Instructors, equipment, everything you need. He walked toward her slowly. I bought this building 3 days ago. It is yours. No strings attached. Even if you never speak to me again, it is still yours. Nathan, I cannot accept this. Yes, you can. Because it is not about the money. It is about believing in what you do, who you are, what you have built. He stopped a few feet away. Claire, you were right. My world is filled with people who only see dollar signs. But you see people, you see potential. You saw a broken man in a jazz club and offered him a dance. You saved me, not with money or status, but with kindness. I am scared, Claire admitted. Scared that I am not enough for your world. You are my world, Nathan said simply. Everything else is just background noise. The business, the money, the galas, none of it means anything without someone to share it with. Rachel taught me that, and you reminded me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. Not a ring, Claire realized with relief. A key. This is the key to this building, but it is also my heart. I am not asking you to change who you are or live in my world. I am asking if we can build our own world together, one where dance academies matter as much as board meetings. where kindness is wealth, where a waitress and a billionaire can simply be two people who chose to keep dancing. Claire took the key with shaking hands. She looked around at the beautiful space, at the dream made tangible, then back at Nathan's hopeful face. "I am sorry I ran away," she said softly. "I let fear win." "I'm sorry I brought you into a room full of sharks without warning you they bite." She laughed through her tears, then closed the distance between them. When she kissed him, it felt like coming home, like finding the rhythm she had been searching for all along. "So," Nathan murmured against her lips, "does this mean you will give us a real chance?" "On one condition. Anything. Next time there is a gala, we skip it and go to the jazz club instead." He grinned. "Deal, though I might need you to ask me to dance again." "I think I can manage that." 6 months later, the Bennett Pierce Academy for Dance opened on a sunny Saturday morning. The name had been Claire's idea, a compromise that honored both their contributions. The building overflowed with families, children spinning in excitement, parents crying happy tears. Ethan was there, his leg braces decorated with streamers, demonstrating his improved moves for anyone who would watch. Mia taught her younger sister basic steps. Thomas, who rarely spoke, gave a short speech about how dance had given him a voice. Nathan and Claire stood together watching it all, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. "You know what is funny?" Claire said. "That night at the jazz club, I almost did not ask you to dance. I almost chickened out. I am very glad you did not." "Me too." She looked up at him. "So, Mr. Pierce, any regrets about falling for a waitress?" "Not a single one, Miss Bennett. Though technically you are not a waitress anymore. You are the director of a prestigious dance academy. Does that mean I am fancy enough for your world now?" He turned to face her fully, cupping her face in his hands. "You were always fancy enough. The question was whether my world deserved you. I am still not sure it does." Before she could respond, a group of children called for them, wanting to show off a new routine. They joined hands and walked toward the laughter, toward the music, toward a future built not on fortune or status, but on something far more valuable. Love, kindness, the courage to ask a stranger to dance, and as the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting golden light across the polished floors, Claire thought about how life could change in a single moment, how one question could lead to transformation, how the space between grief and joy was sometimes just one dance, one chance, one person brave enough to reach out their hand. Nathan squeezed her fingers gently, and she squeezed back, both of them knowing without words that they had found something rare and precious. Not a fairy tale where the prince saved the princess, but a real story where two broken people chose to heal together, where wealth was measured in laughter and dreams, and where the music never had to end as long as they kept moving forward, side by side, heart to heart, one step at a time, the end.